Good morning, Year 10, and welcome to another poetry lesson. Hope you're getting the hang of these now. Before we go ahead, thanks for all the work that you sent me. Don't feel bad about not having sent it in the first place, because you weren't required to, and you don't have to. But I'd really like to see it. And what I have seen, and pretty much all of you have sent me something now. What I have seen is really good, particularly where the poetry is concerned. I'm glad that you're getting into your books and annotating the poems. I know it's difficult without us all being in the same room together. We can't go into things in the detail that I'd like to, but if you've got the basis, the annotations in your books and on your poems, we can definitely build from there. So well done everyone for sending me your work. Anyway, now on to today. I'll do now before we start is to write down 3 quotations from the last poem we did, Love and Friendship. Write them from memory if you can, and then for at least one of these quotations do a quotation explosion to explore language and structure devices. If you can just do one or the other, either language or structure, that's fine too. But have a go at that. I'll give you 5 minutes for that. Our learning objective today is to read and analyse A Broken Appointment by Hardy, and our title is A Broken Appointment by Hardy. So put that title into your books and then go on to the next slide. These poetry lessons are following the same pattern every time, so hopefully you're getting the hang of it by now. For this lesson you're going to need a printout of the poem, which I will attach to class charts. There is a PDF version online if you can find it, but don't worry, I'll attach it to class charts, a pencil as ever, and some different coloured pens and highlighters. Right, again we look closely at the title, A Broken Appointment. What can we work out from the title? And bear in mind that all of our poems are to do with love and relationships. Excuse me, so it's not rocket science, I don't think, to work out that it's going to be someone who's been stood up, to put it in modern language. So there we are. What associations do you have with the word appointment? A meeting with a dedicated time and place, something you make with someone you know very well. And what do you expect this poem to be about? Well, it's a broken appointment, so it's an appointment that does not go ahead. Given that we're in the cluster is love and relationships, which narrows it down significantly. Is it going to be someone who is waiting on a date, a rejection, a broken heart? Those are the types of things that you should be thinking about with that title. Here's the first reading then. I'll read it, read along. It's important that you read these out loud to yourselves. So if you're embarrassed, find yourself a quiet place in the house somewhere, read it out loud. You'll be amazed how reading out loud a poem makes it so much more understandable. This is quite an awkward one to read out actually. It's got a lot of enjambment, which I'll explain in just a minute, which makes the sort of middle part of the first stanza quite difficult rather to read, but here we go. A Broken Appointment. You did not come, and marching time drew on and wore me numb, yet lost for loss of your dear presence there, than that I thus found lacking in your make, that high compassion which can overbear reluctance for pure loving kindness' sake, grieved I, when, as the hope hour stroked its sum, you did not come. You love not me, and love alone can lend you loyalty. I know and knew it. But unto the store of human deeds divine in all but name, was it not worth a little hour or more to add yet this, once you, a woman, came to soothe a time-torn man, even though it be you, love, not me. So read over it, getting to grips with its content. What's it about? Well, it's about someone who was waiting for a woman to turn up and she didn't show. It's okay not to stand every word at this point. You're just trying to get a feel for the poem. So what is the mood of the poem? Make some notes here in your books. What is the mood of the poem is he's feeling rejected. It's sad and quite emotional. He's bordering on angry. That what I was talking about there in the first stanza. You see where it says, yet lost for loss of your dear presence there. There's no punctuation at the end of that line. That is enjambment, which means you read through to the next line. But if you look, 1, 2, 3, 4 lines there have enjambment at the end, which means you read straight the way through. It's almost hard to find your breath reading it. The idea of that is that he's feeling emotional, and it's a kind of an outpouring. Yet lost for loss of your dear presence there, then that I thus found lacking in your make, that high compassion which can overbear reluctance for pure loving kindness' sake. That's someone who's, it's like an outpouring of well, it's not anger, but he's certainly very sad and emotional about this woman not turning up. So who are they speaking to? Well, they're speaking directly to the person who didn't show up. And how do they feel? Well, upset and angry. Well, I hesitate to use the word angry. Upset and rejected, I think, would be a good way of answering the last one of those. How do they feel? So answer those 4 questions in full sentences and put them in your books, and I'll give you 10 minutes to do that before we go to the next slide. Okay, the second reading. I'll read it again. Should start to make a little more sense now. We understand who the person is, how they feel, who they're speaking to. You did not come, and marching time drew on and wore me numb. Yet lost for loss of your presence there, than that I thus found lacking in your make, that high compassion which can overbear reluctance for pure loving kindness' sake. Grieved I, when, as the hope hour stroked its sum, you did not come. You love not me, and love alone can lend you loyalty. I know and knew it. But, unto the store of human deeds, divine in all but name, was it not worth a little hour or more to add yet this, once you, a woman, came to soothe a time-torn man, even though it can be you, love, not me. Right, the speaker, the all-important speaker, is somebody who's experiencing that something that people will, pretty much all of us would encounter at some point in their lives, being jilted. That means kind of stood up by a partner. The feelings of anguish, which are the feelings of sort of sorrow and heartbreak and despair experienced in such moments, can be hard to deal with. Yet these feelings are as much a part of love and relationships as human feelings of joy and fulfillment. That's why it's in the love and relationships cluster, this poster, because you know, you can't love someone and it's all bells and whistles the whole time. Quite often, well, always, it comes with the opposite. Otherwise, it wouldn't be love, would it? If when they didn't show up, you didn't feel anguish. So there you are. That's why this poem, despite the fact that it's about someone who's been stood up, is in the love and relationships cluster. There's an acceptance here that this feeling like this is part of being in love. Don't worry about it. You don't need to write that down though. We'll be going through the annotations in a bit. So on to the next slide then. Now it's up to you to have a go at annotating the poem. We know who the speaker is. He's someone who's been stood up by a woman. And we know the tone of the poem. He's anguished and in despair about this woman not turning up again. So you need to go through and find aspects of language and structure that show that. So just find at this stage one piece of language and one piece of structure that shows that this person is in despair, which means very unhappy about being stood up by this woman. Now I've already pointed out something to you, the enjolment in the first stanza, which means that those 4 lines are just said without a break, which suggests somebody who's in a very emotional state. They're not even taking a breath as they're outpouring this feeling of despair. So you could have that for structure. So go annotate that yourself on the poem. And language, you know how to find language that shows that this person is in despair, and highlight that. So highlight it, draw a little line, you know, annotate it and say why it is you've highlighted and how it supports the tone of the poem. Is there a regular rhyme scheme and meter? Have a look, see if you can work out the rhyme scheme, you know, the A-B business at the end of the line. And then when you have stanzas, it's important to look at each stanza and work out what the subject of each stanza is, and look at the punctuation as well. Annotate the poem, have a go, and it doesn't matter if it's all wrong at this stage. We've got plenty of time to sort that out, but what's important is that you practice the skills of annotation. So first of all you discover what the poem's about, then you discover who the speaker is and who the tone is, what the tone is rather, and then you go through and you find pieces of language that show that? How has the poet shown that through language and structure? So have a go. Go on, get stuck in. I've seen your work, and you're doing extraordinarily well, particularly given that we're in these strange circumstances. So I'm very proud of you, Year 10. Keep it up. Now we're going to go through it for a third time, and I'm going to show you the annotations that I've done, and you are going to copy them into your books. I'll explain as we go along what the annotations mean. I mean, I'm sure you'll understand most of them. Those that you don't, just write them in anyway, and we can build on them when we get back. Now you're going to need to copy this into your books. Okay, this doesn't go onto the poem, this goes into your books. Hardy uses two separate meters, that's two different rhythms, other than the first and lines of each stanza. So other than the first and lines of each stanza, the poem is written in iambic pentameter. Remember that, iambic pentameter, that's 10 syllables a line. Don't worry about that breakdown of what it is there. This alongside the regular rhyme scheme, which is, I don't know if any of you got this right, A, A, B, C, A, A, E, E, D, F, E, E, creates a monotone sound which reflects our speaker's disappointment. Okay, so just copy that in. The first and last lines of each stanza are written in trochaic meter. That means they've got 4 syllables. If iambic pentameter is 10 syllables a line, trochaic meter is 4 syllables. To emphasize the harsh reality of the speaker's rejection, this portrays the selfish nature of love and the speaker's slow realization that the object of his affection does not love him in return. So simply copy that into your books. I don't expect you to understand it all, but copy it all in and we can build on that, as I've said. And I'll give you 10 minutes to do that and then on to the next slide. Right, now here we are. Here are my annotations. So you are going to copy these in. We're going to go we're going to go from top left, cross to the right, and then round clockwise. So the opening and closing lines of each stanza reflect the isolation of the speaker and feels as it does not fit with the iambic pentameter of the rest of the poem. Make sure you link up these annotations with where the arrows point. And then marching time, the personification, makes time seem relentless. His suffering is constant despite the amount of time that has passed. Numb suggests that he has been so consumed with grief that he can't feel anything anymore. The speaker questions why her reluctance to meet him wasn't overpowered by loving kindness. The compound word, that just means when two words are shunted together like that, loving kindness, suggests she lacks human compassion. Hope hour, there's another compound word. Hardy uses compound words to emphasize that there was a moment of optimism and hope, but that he grieved when they didn't arrive. The reference to time once again shows how his suffering is ongoing. Time torn, yet another compound word. Time torn man shows the constancy of his pain. Torn implies that he is not the man he was before. The use of enjambment throughout the poem suggests that the poem is an emotive outburst of uncontrolled bitterness. Alliteration, when you have letters at the beginning of each word, consecutively the same letters. Love, lend and loyalty emphasises disappointment. This is further supported by I know and knew it, which heightens his awareness of both pain both in the past and present. So draw those lines, you know, to the quotes. Link those annotations to the poem, and we can and you'll be good to go when we get back. Now have a read of them, see if you can work out. I'm sure you do understand a lot of them. Work out what a lot of them mean. But there we are. I'll give you 15 minutes to do that. Okay, now the part where you put something into your books or another thing into your books. We're going to make sure we capture the key ideas in our exercise book. This is where you annotate the poem on your own, or write notes into your book on the basis of the annotations on your own. So what your notes must include, reference to the speaker and their feelings and perspective. Now we've talked about the speaker. It's a man waiting for a woman who he's in love with who didn't turn up. And his feelings are disappointment and frustration. At least 3 quotations Remember, you're going to be learning at least 3. Some literary terminology, that's simply words like, you know, personification, enjambment, those things. And a couple of points you could make about language and structure. 1 point you could make about language and 1 point you could make about structure. Now, and again, you need to talk about the key themes of the poem. What do you think the key theme of this poem is? Is it loss, pain, desire, longing, nature, distance, isolation, confrontation, reflection, recovery, time, change? I mean, there's a few you could pick out of there. Desire, loss. So it's up to you. Pick 2 out of there and just write a little short paragraph saying why you think that is the theme of this poem. So another 10 minutes to do that. And now, as usual, you just have to write the 3 quotations. Sorry, rather learn the 3 quotations. So keep them short. Learn 3 quotations, and fantastic. As I say, well done for the work that you've sent me. It's brilliant. I'm so happy to see it. Keep it up, Year 10, and I will speak to you tomorrow. Any problems, as ever, my email address is on class charts, so get in touch. Speak to you tomorrow.